You're listening to Ag Airwaves, conversations with agricultural aviation pilots and operators, experts, and innovators who propel our industry. Ag Airwaves is brought to you by Air Tractor and hosted by Graham Lavender of Ag Air Update.
You're listening to the Ag Airwaves podcast. I'm Graham Lavender, publisher of Ag Air Update. On this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about mentoring, what it takes to get into the agricultural aviation business. Is it hard? Is it easy? What's expected? And the best way we figured to do that was to talk to somebody who just completed their first season based in North Carolina. Some of the work they've done has been out in Nebraska on the corn run and then some local spraying. I want to introduce Hugh Cundiff. Hugh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having us on the podcast.
Yep. We also have Mike Rivenbark. Mike is Hugh's mentor. Mike is a pilot operator for Moore's Aerial out of Clinton, North Carolina. Most of you are familiar with Mike, or some of you may be familiar with Mike. He's got a good-looking 502 XP that's painted in a unique paint scheme. Mike, how are you doing? And glad to have you on.
Hey, doing good this morning, and I'm glad to be here.
Yep. So, Hugh, I'll start with you. Give us a little background, man. How did you get started? And I guess the big question is, what drew you to ag aviation? Like, why did you wake up one morning and say, man, I'm going to be an ag pilot? Or this looks cool? Or were you already in aviation? Or give us a little background on that.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I was never really gearing my flying career towards ag aviation. I've been around aviation since as long as I can remember. My granddad was a private pilot and grew up with him flying in the Cessna 182 that I own now. And that's kind of just where I got my passion from aviation was from him. And got my license, my private license, when I was 18, and ended up going to Liberty University. Got a degree in commercial corporate aeronautics from there, and my goal was to always go fly for the Navy. Ever since I was a kid, that was my mindset, was heading towards the military with my passion for aviation. Got involved in the process of joining up after I finished college, and some medical issues kind of kept me from pursuing a flying career in the military. So that kind of put a halt on that. And then a couple years later, I ended up getting connected with Mike through some family friends of mine, and sat down and had a conversation with him, and ultimately offered me a loader job. And so I came out the following year. That was October of 2019. Came out and helped out with the tail end of Beans there, the end of 2019, and then started full time with him in 2020, doing the loading stuff. And from the very first time that I came out to the airport and saw the operation, and was able to get hands-on loading, mixing, and just seeing how everything worked, I kind of developed a newfound passion for the agricultural side of aviation. And like I said, it was not something that I had ever geared my flying career towards growing up. I even grew up around Wayne Slaughter, who was the 1996 NAAA president, and grew up listening to him tell stories and just watching his flying operation there in Farmville, North Carolina. But it was just never something that I'd considered, because I'd always wanted to join the military and fly for the Navy. But like I said, I found a newly developed passion, and decided to roll with it. And now I'm just completed my first season. Did about 60 hours in a Weatherly 620 that me and Mike restored from the ground up, and then hopped in a 402, and I'm currently finishing out the rest of the season on that. So,
All right, that's impressive. So let's back up and let's talk about you've got these aspirations to be this Navy pilot, maybe get some setbacks in that career path, and you find yourself at this operation in North Carolina, and we all know that Mike's a character, so I know it's a lot to take in initially, and you're loading and mixing and washing windshields and washing airplanes. And what was your mindset? There's a lot of of banter that goes back and forth of, oh, I'm a pilot. I don't need to get on the ground. I don't need to load. But, the three of us talking here know how important that is, because, ag flying is not just flying. It's
Mhm.
applicating, and you've got to be an applicator, and you have to understand every aspect of this job to be a good ag pilot. So what did you do, and how important did you see it to be on the ground and to help with the day to day of the operation? And how did that prepare you to get in that cockpit of that airplane?
Well, I think it's important to mention that, when you get involved in the industry and when you find a mentor or somebody who's going to bring you into the business, I think a big thing that needs to be clear is communication and how that process is going to look. And that was very clear with Mike from the beginning. Um, he laid out what the expectations were, what the process would look like, and he made it clear that you're gonna do your time on the ground, and that's invaluable for learning as much as you can before you step foot into an airplane. Because, like you said, it's not just flying the airplane; it's making good quality applications and being safe while you're doing that. So that was very clear from the very beginning that I was going to cut my teeth on the ground side of things first. And so when I went in with that expectation, it wasn't difficult to fight that mindset of, oh, I'm a pilot. I don't need to be washing windows. I don't need to be mixing chemicals, loading chemicals. I've done my time. I've got my license. I should be in an airplane now. It was easy just to go ahead and move past that mindset because, like I said, he laid it out from the very beginning, and the other mentors that I had already been connected with, Rick Boardman being one of those out in Nebraska, he made it clear as well that was the expectation, and that's the best way to learn before you actually move into an airplane, so you're not having you know so many things going on at once while you're doing 150 miles an hour across the ground 5 feet from the top of the crop.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. And, with any other profession, you can't jump into nursing or anything like that without doing clinical work, without, getting the nuts and bolts, as I call it, of the career. And, ag aviation is no different. Um, Mike, I'm going to move to you now. And what made you, were you looking for a ground support person, or were you looking for a pilot? How did you get involved with Hugh? And tell us something from an operator standpoint, what you expect of a new hire in order to put them in an airplane, and to, put, your neck out there with the insurance and all that. What kind of is going through your mind there, and what are you looking for?
Well, when I agreed and we'd talked, and I agreed to hire Hugh on, and we did. I told him a lot about his first year was going to be very dependent on work ethic. So, that's I think that's one thing that I look for as an operator, and that a lot of operators do. If you're not able to handle the job while we're loading the airplane, then you're not going to be able to handle the stress once you get in the airplane. So, going back to the loading side, everybody thinks that that's the grunt work, or the initiation phase. It is, but there's a reasoning behind that. And then, like you mentioned, you did too. In order to be a good aerial applicator, you've got to know what you're doing, know what you're mixing, and have a good understanding. Back to your question on, did I need a pilot? Whenever I hired him, I needed an experienced pilot, honestly, and we were able to get an airplane in here to help us. Hugh was running 2 airplanes that summer, which isn't a whole lot of work, but by himself, it's a whole lot of work. And so we did that. He did great through there, and we kind of kept talking as we go. And there's not any better learning curve than sitting around in the afternoon and hearing the stories that happened during the day.
That's
With
right.
the bird that we saw, the wire that we missed, the something snuck up on us that was unexpected, and that I really feel like that time during the loading, he was also getting all of these stories that have carried with him to the airplane in his second year and his first year finishing up as an ag pilot. So
So, you mentioned work ethic and something that is really unique. It's one thing to show up early and stay late and, do what's required for you, but tell everybody listening what Hugh did to take the work ethic to a whole nother level. What did you do? What did you and Hugh do during the off season? The many times I'd call you on the phone, I'd say, "Come meet me here. Let's do this," and you would mutter an explicit and say, "No, I'm working on this project." Tell everybody a little bit about, instead of you having to go out and put Hugh directly into an airplane, and Hugh, you can comment on this as soon as Mike decides to quit talking. But tell us a little bit about that project before he got into that seat and before he started flying. What did he do?
So we got a wild here. It was September the 1st of last year, 2022, and knew that Hugh was going to be going into the Weatherly. We were planning on it at that time for the whole year, this year for 23 season, and so we decided we had to take the wings off to do the inspection on the wing attach brackets on the Weatherly, and we had some engine issues. Didn't work out to take it to a mechanic, so we decided that, along with my mechanic here in Clinton, we were going to tear the airplane apart and put it back together. What a better learning experience than that! So that turned into a lot more money than what I really wanted to spend, but it was invaluable time that he and I got working together. And this not going to happen at every operation. And I'm not tearing an airplane apart this winter either.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it,
It's time to
we
enjoy the off season a little bit.
yeah, we tore the airplane down and stripped it and repainted it, and we basically went through every nut, bolt, wire, safety pin, safety wire in the airplane, and put it back together again through the off season, and
And
came out
who
really
sh-
good.
who showed up for that, and he really demonstrated a work ethic. So that you felt comfortable as an operator then moving him up the ladder to the next step.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. He had as much of blood, sweat, and tears in that airplane as I did, and as he was moving into it to fly it, felt like he had a little bit more respect for the airplane, and I know I certainly did because it came out really good for a '96 model Weatherly.
Yeah, it looks good. I've seen the pictures of it. Hugh, tell us about that airplane rebuild project. Was that your first year, or that was your first off season as part of the operation there? That was the first winter.
That was finishing up the first full year that I'd worked with Mike, and that was like Mike said, we had planned to take it up to a mechanic to let them do the wing spar AD, and ended up just doing it all ourselves. And uh, initially, we were just going to do the wings under the supervision of our A&P here, and then we just got more and more into the project, and found some other minor issues that we wanted to correct, and then we just said, screw it, let's just do this thing right. And like Mike said, there was a lot of blood, a lot of sweat, a few cuss words here and there, and
A few, right, right. Yeah, we all believe that. Right, right.
a lot of phone calls to different contacts around the country trying to figure out technical issues. And it was an awesome learning experience. It was just an awesome experience in general to say, hey, we've got a lot of pride in this airplane that we did this, and now we're putting it to work and using money, using it to make money. And that's the airplane that Mike initially broke into the industry in. So there's a little bit of lineage there. That was his first ag airplane that he flew, and the one that I flew. So um, lot of pride in that project, and I foresee that one staying in our fleet for many years to come.
Yeah,
But
after all of that work, I can't see you getting rid of it without a really high price tag.
right.
But all right, so the airplane gets done, and during as part of your your preparations, I guess over that time period, you and Mike are talking. You obviously going to fly the Weatherly. You're going to where and or how did you prepare yourself? Did you're obviously a member of your state association, you're a member of the national association. Are you going to classes, or what else are you doing when you're not mixing another load, or fixing an airplane, or hanging out at the airstrip? What are some key points you could give to some other people wanting to get in? What do they need to do with their time when they're just waiting?
Just learn as much as you can to perfect your craft. We're offering a service to farmers that they're paying very good money for, and we want to give them the best application on their crop as possible. And so just using your time wisely to learn as much as you can. When you go to the national convention, it might seem like a big party, but there is a lot of good classes that you can go and sit in on, and learn a lot of information about power plants and spray technology and just all sorts of things, especially the wire course. Um, that's a huge class that you can take that will keep you safe, make you a safer pilot, make you more aware pilot. um, and just talking with these experienced applicators out there, there is hundreds of thousands of hours of ag pilots out there, and you can just learn so much from them, of just picking their brain, you writing down, if a question pops into your head, jot it down in your phone, jot it down in a notepad. When you get a chance to talk to some of these experienced guys that have got 20, 30, 40 years in the industry, ask these questions, pick their brains a lot, and learn from those guys. um, but yes, just studying your application books for when you're going to take your state pesticide tests. And yeah, just don't be a person who sits there and, I think I've learned enough. Continuously be a sponge, continuously soak up as much information as you can to always work on your craft, and become the best pilot, the best applicator that you can.
That's right. Those are solid words right there. Um, so let's talk about your first takeoff in the Weatherly. What
Mhm.
was going through your mind? Don't tear it up. Don't.
Yeah, yeah. Don't tear it up, because I'm gonna hate to have to do this all over again.
Right. That's right.
No, the Weatherly is a very forgiving airplane. It's a very easy airplane to fly. Um, I started my flight training in a tailwheel, and so having that initial training in a tailwheel airplane, a lot of those lessons that I learned transferred over into the Weatherly. But it really is a really good airplane to fly, very stable, very safe. Just treat it with respect, and take care of it, and it's going to take care of you.
Right. So you went out and got familiar with the airplane, and then put some order in it.
Yep, yep. Went around and just got comfortable flying the airplane, maneuvering it, working on making coordinated, safe turns and efficient turns. And then gradually we added 50 gallons of water, and I flew for probably 10 hours hauling 50 gallons of water, spraying it up and down the runway. And then we'd move it up to 80 gallons and 100 gallons and 120 gallons, and from there on up, and just getting comfortable with the differences in the weight, and how the airplane handled. And um, I sprayed our runway with water probably, gosh knows, 1,000 times. So the runway is well watered, but getting that sight picture of your height off the ground, and working with the GPS, and just getting comfortable flying low level, that was imperative to do before actually putting the airplane to work.
All right. And Mike, from an operator's perspective, what was your your MO? What was your syllabus to get Hugh comfortable from your standpoint?
Well, the number one, anything that we did, we talked about extensively before we even got in the airplane and what to expect. And like you said, we sprayed the runway here a thousand times or more. And I remember the first time he was getting good with it, he was comfortable with it, and I was like, okay, we're going to go over to a field with no water in it, and you're doing good with your height at the runway, but this is putting it into perspective. And I remember when we got in the first little field, we don't have big fields around here. There it was probably about a 30-acre field or so, and trees on 5 sides.
You're
And
right.
he uh, he went and kind of dove in over the trees a little bit and was about 30 feet across the field and came back up. He's like, "Man, that's tight." I was like, "Yeah, you're still way high though." And so it was a, but like I said, even with that, I told him, I said, you work down when you're comfortable, and that's what he did. Never put a lot of pressure on him, and never put him in anything initially when he did start flying that he wasn't comfortable with. I would go do it or let one of the more experienced pilots do it. But the biggest thing that I saw as he was learning, one, that first 5-10 hours that he had in the airplane was nerve wracking for me.
Right.
I had a handheld radio out there with him, and could talk to him on it while I watched him the whole time. But it's still knowing that it's in his hands now. There wasn't anything I could do that I couldn't tell him over the radio. That was it.
That's right.
So that's a lot to it, and that's big expense on my part if something did happen. So we definitely, I felt like he was well prepared whenever he got in the airplane, and he did do a great job initially with the airplane. And like I said, he'd go spray for 30 minutes or just carry water around in it, not even spray it out, just so he learned to turn with the weight. That's kind of the way that I was taught back in the day when I learned.
A
It
lot of
isn't
people
about
were. I mean,
spraying the
that's
water;
right.
it's
Yeah.
about that weight that's on it, and you leave it on there and learn to turn with it. So,
Right. So, Hugh, how many seasons did you do in the Weatherly? Your first.
Well, we in North Carolina, we run pretty much from the end of February on blueberries all the way through October is kind of our season. So we're out in the Midwest. They've got 4 weeks to do it. We've got about 8 months to do it. So we like to consider ourselves, we have at least 3 or 4 seasons in a year. But I flew the Weatherly for probably 60 hours before I transitioned into the 402, and so I got a lot of applications on blueberries, fields that we spray 7 to 10 times a year, so we're very familiar with the fields. And so Mike knew a lot of these fields like the back of his hand, and so he could tell me exactly where wires were or obstacles were. And some of the more complex fields I didn't spray, but yeah, probably about 60 hours of actual spraying time in the Weatherly
All right.
before I transition.
All right, Mike, tell us about the transition into the turbine. What were you thinking?
well,
Like,
like I said, initially we were not planning on him going in a turbine the first year. We spent a lot of money on the Weatherly and had it up to, it was as good as it was going to get. And about November, December of this past year, this 402 came up for sale. And Rick, being my number one mentor, as I was coming up through the industry, he and I talked about it. And I didn't really need another turbine full time here. He didn't need another turbine in Nebraska full time. And we found this 402 and we split it, and it was with the intentions of moving Hugh into it. And that's one thing that's changed in the industry that I see is more and more younger guys, new guys, rookies are starting to get into turbines quicker. And Hugh was a prime example for that. He was very proficient in the Weatherly, in the he mentioned the 60 hours of ag time that he had of actual spraying in the Weatherly, but he probably had another 50 hours of just hauling water and getting familiar with it. So
Right.
about 100 hours in the Weatherly before we moved him into the 402, and so that was it was a lot of things that happened this year with that transition, and I wouldn't say that's not going to happen for everybody by any means. I feel like you've got to be a strong pilot, but you've got to be confident. But if when you get overconfident, that's when it'll kill you quickly.
Right.
And so Hugh had the mentality of, and I'd beat it in his brain enough that this thing will kill you, and we moved forward to the turbine. We sent him to Nebraska. I had already bought a turbine transition class with the University of Nebraska out there. So he basically flew out to Nebraska commercial. He went and took his Nebraska pesticide license and went and did the turbine transition. And then he went to Rick's to pick up the 402 to bring it back to North Carolina.
Yep. I mean, that's phenomenal. That's a testament to his dedication as a upcoming pilot or a pilot by that point, and then your dedication as an operator and mentor wanting to bring somebody into the business. So, Hugh, back to you. Tell us about the first season. I was talking to you the other day, and you were throwing some insane numbers of hours out there of how much work you did, and I mean, you got enough experience this first time go round that's really admirable.
Yeah, so I hauled my first paying load on May 5th of this year. So up until May 5th, I had been just doing training in the Weatherly, getting comfortable, getting ready. I was looking at my hours the other day, and since May 5th, I've flown right around 550 hours of Part 137 ag time since May 5th. And like I said, we're still not done. So
Right.
that's a good bit of flying in the year. But
Yeah,
it's
I would say so.
yeah,
Yep.
it's like I said, it's been a really good year. That transition to the 402 was absolutely terrifying, not gonna lie.
Yep. And
uh,
how was that from your perspective? I'm assuming you went through your simulator training, your emergency procedures, and then there's a famous wing checkout on
yep.
wing checkout there, and at some point you have to say, well, it's all or nothing now. So
Right.
how
Yeah.
how did that go for you?
The simulator was great. Being able to simulate these emergencies, such as hot start, hung start, etc., and being able to move the switches and go through procedures to correct those issues was definitely invaluable. But the simulator itself it's not really for flying the airplane. It's not going to prepare you for how the airplane handles, anything like that. But like I said, going through those motions on your procedures was invaluable. Um, yeah, the very first flight, we took it over to a small municipal airport that had a little bit longer runway than Rick's, and yeah, that first takeoff, it was, man, it was wild, but
Right.
a lot more power than the Weatherly. The biggest thing for me was the sight picture. The Weatherly's got a big radial engine. The tail sits a little bit lower, so your sight picture versus that, and in a 402 is a lot different. So I think that was the hardest thing for me to really get used to when it came to landings and really making good landings and takeoffs was the sight picture. The 402 is a lot more responsive on the controls. It's obviously got a lot more power. It's a lot faster. Um, so just the combination of everything was a lot to take on. But um, Mike and Rick both briefed me on a lot of the ins and outs of a turbine, and it kind of prepared me mentally for that. but still, your first flight when you move into a turbine is always nerve wracking, and I think there's probably still indentions in the stick from where I was gripping it so hard.
Right.
But I flew it for probably about 10 to 15 hours out at Rick's before I ferried it back to North Carolina, and got comfortable with takeoffs and landings, and going into Rick's short strip. That was an experience in and of itself, but I got comfortable because I knew I had to do it for the upcoming season. And yeah, so I got back to North Carolina with it, and that's when I started putting some water in the 402. And basically, we started the same process all over again that we did with the Weatherly.
Right.
Started gradually increasing water, and going out and just working on turns, and feeling the weight differences and stuff like that. So yeah, it was really this. Once I got comfortable flying the airplane, it was the same process as the Weatherly all over again. And once I started spraying with it, it was very select fields, so I could, ease my way into it, and then just kept on rolling from there, and have had a pretty good year. Got a lot of good experience flying different fields, different obstacles, and learning how to navigate those obstacles safely. And so, yeah, it was a lot of experience, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for Rick and Mike, and um, all the other pilots that I've flown with have sat down and talked with me. And, like Mike said, at the end of the day, sitting around at the table, drinking a beer once everything is done, and talking and exchanging stories, that right there is invaluable learning experience. So,
Right. So, in closing, Mike, I'll go back to you. What one piece of advice you can give the aspiring ag pilot? What would it be, and what do they need to hold on to? Because everybody knows it takes a lot. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of drive. What's one piece of advice that you want them to hold on to?
One thing is, I'm looking for if I say be here at 6 o'clock and you're here at 5:55 every morning, that's gonna be your number one. Be on time whenever something is asked. Whenever you come in to work, be ready to work, whatever it is. It might be cleaning up the hangar that day. Number two, probably the number one thing is going to be personality. Hughes and I's personality meshed really well. He's done great here. He did great in Nebraska with all of the BS that goes on. But that's number one between your operator and coming into if you're coming into this industry, go meet with some different guys and hang out with a day or two. It'll be a day or two of your time you might not get paid for, but see if you like the way things are, the cleanliness around their operation, how things are run, how things are expected to be, and then once you get to that part, when you get to the ground, if you get the opportunity to work for somebody, you've got to give it 110%. And there will be long days. They start out fun at the beginning of the season. By the middle of the season, everybody's kind of ill and grouchy, and that's going to tell you, how things are going to go the rest of the time, how you handle that. And then the one thing that I look for, and which I feel like I do have in Hugh, is going to be the loyalty. I've spent a lot of my time, a lot of effort, and a lot of my money to teach him to get him to where he is now. This year, and maybe next year, he didn't necessarily make any money for me, but he is learning to do the job the correct way and the safe way, and that time will come. So where the loyalty comes in is, 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, however long he does fly for me, hopefully forever. That's where things come in, and you get a tighter bond, really. You know what to expect, and just make sure that you do that.
Yeah, that's good. Good way to put that. Hugh, what about you? If you could impart some wisdom on a upcoming and aspiring ag pilot, what's one thing you tell them?
yeah, I would say kind of along with what Mike was saying. Find you a mentor that you mesh well with. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that you guys need to be buddy, but find someone who's going to teach you in the right way, who's going to make sure that you're doing a safe, good job. And communication is key. Every time before we went and did something, it was always briefed between Mike and I. So finding someone who's going to lay out the expectations, lay out the plan, lay out how they want things done is huge. Communication is key. And don't limit yourself to one mentor. Have 5, 6, 10, however many you want, however many you feel that you need. Um, grab information and grab data from numerous amounts of people. But yeah, finding an operation that you mesh well in is huge. One quick story: the first couple of months that I met Mike, we made the decision to fly my 182 from North Carolina all the way out to the High Sierra Fly-In there in Nevada, and so I spent 43 hours less than 2 feet away from him in my 182 flying across the country. And so that right there was a very cool, unique bonding experience.
Yeah, you should
Uh,
be an automatic hire after having to do that. Lord.
and I can tell you, I think out of that 43 hours, Mike flew maybe point 0.1 or point 0.2. So it was that
True
was a good
story. My autopilot worked great.
Right.
yeah.
He was sitting right next to you, wasn't he?
That's right. That's right. But no, that was a good experience, and like I said, just finding an operation that you mesh well in, and finding a good mentor who's going to lead you in the right direction.
That's good. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time. I know everybody else does. It's a really cool story of the airplane rebuild, how you jumped from that right into the turbine and had a very successful first season. Um, so I wish you many more to come, and I know Mike does too. He's trying to get his money back, but
Absolutely.
all right. Well, you guys have a great off season, and I'm sure I'll see you at an upcoming meeting or so.
Yep.
Yep.
Thanks for having us, Mel.
Yeah. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to reach out via email, and I'll do what I can to answer any questions. And I'll have 4 or 5 past programs that I will be presenting this coming fall. So if I'm around there, don't be afraid to look me up if you have questions. I'll be
Yep.
more than happy to answer whatever I can.
Mike and Hugh can both be reached at Mike at mooresaerial.com and Hugh at mooresaerial.com. And like they said, they'll be more than happy to any questions. All right, guys, you have a good one, and we'll talk to you later. I'm Graham Lavender, publisher of Ag Air Update, and you're listening to the Ag Airwaves podcast.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Ag Airwaves. You can subscribe to this podcast with your favorite podcast app. Get a transcript of this episode and listen to others at airtractor.com/podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on Ag Airwaves, contact Graham Lavender at agairupdate.com. We'll be back soon with another episode.